Hey everyone, today we are working on a Frigidaire side-by-side refrigerator, and the problem we are having today is that it is not cooling very well in the refrigerator portion of the unit. It's running about 48 to 50 degrees, and we want to go over all the different things that could cause it not to run properly. The freezer portion is running just fine. It's running between 0 and 5 degrees, and we have the dials set to the correct settings. So I want to show you about 4 or 5 different things today that we can do to solve this issue. Primarily, we're going to need a multimeter and a screwdriver to take apart some things. We're going to leave the refrigerator plugged in for the most part because we need to run some tests that require electricity. But if you're concerned, you can always unplug it, part removals, and then plug it back in for the tests. So let's get to it.
The first test is the most direct. We want to simply check the airflow from the freezer cabinet to the refrigerator cabinet. If you stick your hand up in the air dampener assembly near it, do you feel a strong amount of cold air coming into the cabinet? Now, if you don't, there could be a blockage or the dampener system could have failed. On a Frigidaire, this is pretty common for the dampener to fail, so let's take the cold control out and test this particular part of the system. The cold control assembly has a total of 5 screws. 3 on the front and then 2 on the left side, and they all need removed to get to the dampener assembly. The screwdriver I chose to start out with this video is too wide and it's not up to the job, so I need to use a thinner, longer screwdriver to get the hex head screws out. When taking the screws out, make sure to save all of them. The screw holding the dampener assembly on in the back is extremely long, so make sure and note that that screw only goes in that rear part of the assembly of the unit. Also, there's not a lot of room to work with on this. I can't quite show you how to unscrew this last screw in the air dampener assembly to remove the cold control assembly, but you get the whole idea. Now, when you have the cold control system removed, the dampener assembly is able to be viewed so you can inspect and see if anything's going wrong. If you weren't getting airflow, you want to test the assembly motor and see if it can open and close freely. Now, the way you do this is to position the motor and control and dampener so you can view it. And you want to turn the fresh food knob off all the way off, which is counterclockwise to the left, and then turn it on to see the motor and dampener system move properly if it's being triggered to open and close the dampener. If you cycle the knob and this doesn't work, then it's likely that the dampener is either bad or frozen. Make sure there's no frost on it that could possibly prevent it from moving. But if it doesn't work, then it definitely needs replaced. There are just a few places on a wire harness to swap this out. These controls can be very expensive, but I do have a link for a version that's quite a bit more affordable. If you've determined that the dampener is good, you can go ahead and reassemble the cold control back where it needs to go. But if you want to leave it apart for now, that's okay, because there is another test we want to do a little bit later in the video with the adaptive defrost system. So you may want to leave it alone for now. Next, we want to take out the wire shelves that are in the freezer cabinet so we can get to the back plate. They each have a plastic C-ring that holds the shelves in place, and you need to press on these C-rings to remove them so you can remove the shelves. Once the C-rings are gone, you're going to press and move the shelf all the way to the left so you can bend it diagonally and pull these shelves out. It takes a little bit of patience to get it to slot to the left all the way to pull them out, but you'll get them after a few moments. If you need help with the C-rings though, you may want to use a flat blade screwdriver to press them out. Some versions are difficult, but these are quite easy. Once we remove all the shelves, it exposes about 4 hex head screws for this first panel. The screwdriver I was trying to use for the video wasn't doing a great job at this point, so I switched over to a cordless drill, which made this job a whole lot quicker. This is totally optional, but it's definitely preferable to get these out given the depth and width of the refrigerator. Once these screws have been taken out, we can pull up and out on the bottom panel that will expose most of the evaporator system. But there are 2 more additional screws up top that we want to take out that will allow us to expose the entire cooling system to view. On this evaporator system, a major thing to note is that we see no frost or ice buildup on this particular system. Generally, some frost is acceptable because of the extremely cold temperature and nature of the refrigerator will allow moisture to get on the evaporator piping, which will cause the moisture to freeze on these coils. Now, if instead you see a huge chunk of ice, something with the defrost system has gone bad and needs replaced. Now, another major consideration on this particular fridge is that there is a lot of green corrosion on a weld on the evaporator tubing, which suggests that maybe there is a refrigerant leak on this system, but we will get to that way later. Going back to the ice buildup, which is very common, if you want to defrost it manually, you want to turn the refrigerator off by turning the dials all the way counterclockwise until the refrigerator turns off. Then you want to use a fan on the highest temperature setting or a steam gun to remove the giant block of ice. I would suggest against using a hair dryer or heat gun, because if you put too much heat in this system, it can melt the plastic liner around the evaporator coils and cause you more problem than what you have already. Once you can get to the components of the defrost system, there are two components we want to look at. The first is the defrost heater itself. It is the black metal rod that surrounds the system, and the defrost thermostat, which is here attached to one of the copper tubes. Now, if the defrost thermostat is bad, you'll typically see it swollen up and it will pop the top of the holder that it is in, and it's very easy to visually identify. If you see that cap popped, then you definitely want to replace it immediately. Now for the defrost heater, we decided to go ahead and unplug the wire harness in the back of the refrigerator to test the wires that the heater is operating on. Trace them from the heater where they insert into the harness. Then you can use your multimeter to check resistance. Typically between 20 and 40 ohms is good for this type of refrigerator, and we're at 30, which is perfect. Next, you want to visually identify that the evaporator fan is in good running order. Now on this refrigerator, there's no question because it's running just fine with the doors open on camera, so it's perfect. But in many cases, your refrigerator will not operate the fan unless certain conditions are met. You may want to try to turn the fan off and on by using the cold control knobs as you cycle it off and on the freezer side. For other models, it could be tied into the door switch being activated, so you may need to press and hold on the door switch to see if the fan will run or not. Otherwise, with the wire harness unplugged like it was earlier, you can test the fan to see if it has resistance much like the defrost heater. You'll use your multimeter, set it to ohms resistance, and you should get roughly 100 ohms out of the fan if it's working properly. Now if you get the OL symbol and it's not running, then chances are it's shot and it needs replaced. You can also test the defrost thermostat, but unlike the other components, it has to be very, very cold to operate electrically, as it shuts off when the temperature gets warm in the refrigerator. It is a safety cutoff so the refrigerator does not get too hot on the defrost mode. So if you want to test it, you need to take it out of the refrigerator and put it in a cup of ice water to test with a multimeter, or you want to make sure that the refrigerator is sufficiently iced up and then unhook the wires and test it with your multimeter. If you get any signal from it other than OL when it's super cold, that means it works, but if you get OL when it is below about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it is bad and needs replaced. Now in the case of this exact specific refrigerator we've been messing with, I want to make sure it's operating right, and I don't like how the coils are totally unfrosted. So I want to close the doors and leave it running until the next day to see if we can find a frost pattern on this refrigerator. I think it just defrosted prior to making this specific video. The next day you can see clearly that frost is on the evaporator system and it's cooling decently, but it's not working the way I want to yet. Another component in this entire system to consider is the adaptive defrost board. It's located here when we are taking apart the dampening system. Now, if you want to test the adaptive defrost control system, what you need to do is open the refrigerator door and press the door switch 5 times in 6 seconds. If you do this correctly, it's going to shut the dampener to the refrigerator, and then it's going to turn on the heating system for the freezer side and start to take away the ice from the coils. As you can see here, the system is starting to heat up properly, and it's rapidly taking the frost pattern off of this refrigerator. If you have a refrigerator that this test sounds like it should be working to where everything is off, you'll hear hopping and hissing from the adaptive defrost if it's working properly. Now, if the adaptive defrost does not run these tests and heat the refrigerator up, then chances are either something in the defrost system is bad or the adaptive defrost board is bad itself, and those can get a little bit pricey. Now let's go ahead and push the refrigerator out of the space and get behind the unit at the bottom for some further investigations. Once we're at the back of the refrigerator and the panel is removed, we want to investigate 2 main things. We want to look at the condenser fan and the black condenser coils. These black coils need to be clean to ensure the refrigerator can exchange hot and cold air properly. If they have too much dirt on them, they will not be able to cool effectively as needed, and the condenser fan does essentially the same thing. It allows cold air to cycle from the outside to the coils through to the compressor to keep everything cool and running. And if the compressor fan is not running all the time, then it's not doing its job and it's causing the refrigerator not to cool down properly and needs replaced. Both of these things in this example refrigerator are in proper order and they're running well. The coils are good but not in great shape, and if you need a cleaning kit for your refrigerator, I do have a link in the description. Also, I want to note there's more corrosion on the back of the refrigerator line, which could be a problem again for this particular refrigerator. From here, I've shown you all the major possible tests I can do. I'm going to put the refrigerator back together off camera and turn the refrigerator controls down. Hopefully all these ideas helped you on your particular refrigerator, but in this case on this refrigerator, not quite so. So we're going to probably go ahead and tap the system in another video and see if it is low on refrigerant. So make sure to subscribe and like this video, so hopefully you can see that next one for a later time. Have a great day.